Hello plant lovers, and today let us look at the Chilean blue crocus, otherwise known as Tecophilaea cyanocrocus, which isn't actually a crocus. These fabulous flowers, strangely enough, are a native of Chile, from the mountains near Santiago in Chile, where they live on quite stony outcrops. Quite rare in the wild, unfortunately. They're a winter flower, which makes them fantastic for cultivation because the colours are amazing and there's not much going on at this time of year. And they're relatively easy to grow. The only problem is finding them. I bought these from a rare plant nursery in Melbourne, and I'll put the link below so that you can have a look if you want to. But if you're in a cool temperate part of the world, you should be able to find a rare bulb dealer who will have them. Let's talk care. Very simple, not unlike any other bulb really. They need a light medium, so I usually mix a bit of sand and a bit of shell grit into a regular potting compost. Don't overwater. That is the miracle of bulb treatments. If you imagine that they are a rocky soil dweller on a mountaintop, you can imagine that the drainage is going to be very quick and fast. So no waterlogging and no sogginess. It's very important with these bulbs, otherwise they will rot. And as they're hard to find and quite expensive, you don't want rotting blue Chilean crocus bulbs. Again, like lots of bulbs, they do like full sun, and unfortunately we are in a rental while we are renovating our other house, and they're not getting that much sun. They're sort of clinging to the shafts of filtered winter sun that's coming through, so they could be a little perkier perhaps if they had strong sun, but c'est la vie, they've still flowered, which is very exciting. Now, as you can see, the colors vary. They're sort of a limpid indigo violet, quite amazing. Now, I did notice on the Kew Gardens website, it describes them as being fragrant, which mine aren't. Other basic care, like most bulbs, they have a rest period when they finish flowering, which in this case is from spring to summer. So they flower late winter, very early spring. It's midwinter here in Australia, and they have come into bloom for me. So the minute that the flowers have died and the leaves start to die down, ease up on your watering completely and let the soil really start to dry out. My quirk with bulb cultivation in pots is that I just don't like the media to dry out completely. Now, some people do dry it out completely, put it in a shed, and then repot the bulbs every year in fresh soil, but I sort of see no need for that. And as our climate is not dissimilar to Santiago in Chile, I actually just leave this pot under a tree in the garden. So it gets the occasional summer shower. I just make sure that it's never too wet, and if it is starting to look a little wet, I'll just put it under cover. But generally, I think they can deal with that environment. But depends where you are. Don't let them get too wet in that rest period. They start to feed themselves up for their flowering period in early autumn, very late summer. So in Australia, in the Southern Hemisphere, I start watering these in February, which is the end of summer. Just a little bit and a little bit of food, because they're starting to build up their nourishment for flowering. Again, not overwatering and making sure that the soil isn't too damp, but that's when I start ramping up the watering of these. So a lot's going on under the surface before you see any shoots. If you kind of wait until the shoots start to come, you've kind of missed their growth spurt, which is under the soil. So the quirk of these is that they do need a little bit of food and water quite early in the growing season before you would think. Other than that, off you go. They're fantastic flowering bulbs, and I really love them. So I hope you can find them wherever you are. They are a cool temperate bulb, so in lots of parts of the world they should be very, very happy. They are very happily grown in pots indoors as well, as long as you give them the right sunlight exposure and don't keep them too wet. But like any bulb, they do very well in pots indoors. And although I grow mine outdoors, when they're in flower, I bring them in because they are so beautiful, and it's midwinter and there's not much going on. And as you can see, I don't have that many plants. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I generally buy a couple every season and add to the pot. They're very slow propagating, which is why they're quite expensive and hard to find. It's just not commercially viable, unfortunately, for nurseries to grow them. But that shouldn't deter you. Have a go, find them from somewhere, and they are the most beautiful things. So enjoy your Chilean blue crocus, otherwise known as Tecophilaea cyanocrocus. It's not a crocus, but it was named after the daughter, who was called Tecophilaea, of an Italian botanist in the 19th century, which is kind of a charming story. Anyway, plant lovers, see if you can find them. Have a go at growing them. They're really beautiful and very, very rewarding. Plant lovers, enjoy yourselves. Take care out there in COVID world, which we are still in Melbourne. Being with green things is very healthy for the soul. So I'll see you next week.